realize you just can't be doing things by yourself, period. We're never on this earth, on this planet alone. And so along the way, you're always going to find your guide, your mentor, people who can share their wisdom with you. And that is what inspires me to starting my own business and being someone else's light to guide them home.
Hello, everyone. I'm Rishi Katz, and welcome to the Oval Table, where we discuss all things related to helping those who live and work within your business how to survive, thrive, avoid pitfalls, have more fun, and become successful faster. Getting advice and input from someone outside of your business can make a big difference, and that's what we seek to do for you each and every week. Here at the Oval Table, we believe that every voice matters, and we want to model how that works. Often the advice that makes the difference comes from where you least expect it. We seek every week to provide a lens for a different way to do business. So much more is possible when everyone's ideas make it to the table. Let me introduce you to our co-hosts, Vaughn Johnson, Doug Bowers, and Carl Walsh.
Well, good day, everyone, and welcome to the Oval Table. And today we have a very special guest, a very special show for you, Michelle Quay, who is special in many different ways. I've known Michelle for a while, and the most remarkable thing about Michelle is that when she was 11 years old, she was hit by a taxi in Taiwan, and she is what you would call handicapped. Her legs were crushed. She needs aid walking. She uses a crutch, but fortunately not paralyzed. When she was 15, her family came to the United States. They went to New York. It is a great place to learn and a great place to gather energy, which Michelle has in bundles. Michelle, welcome to the table.
Thank you, Carl. It's my pleasure to hang out.
Michelle, you have a consulting business. It's really a coaching business, a life coaching business. And you also have a fairly extensive online presence. Could you talk a little bit about how you got into that and what inspired you to do it?
So why is it that I want to go into coaching or mentorship is because I'm coming along from living with disability. And I'm not shy about calling it out as disability. It is disability for a lot of people. And, people are afraid to use that word because we don't want to offend someone. So coming from that place of living with the disability, I needed a mentor. I needed someone to guide me through that journey and say, you know what, it's okay because there's so many different things that life can happen, and you don't have to restrict yourself by the way that you look, by the way that you walk, by the way that you use your crutches. You don't have to restrict yourself in that way. And I think what didn't work for me was I didn't have that somebody to hold my hand and show me the way. So along the way, I have to figure things out. And when you have to figure things out, you start to learn a lot of the challenges, a lot of these tools that you end up sharing as a result of these challenges and obstacles that you had experienced. And so that is what inspired me to start going into coaching. And the picture got clear after I decided to challenge my own challenge by hiking through a 26 Inca trail to Machu Picchu by myself with my two crutches, having a backpack on my back, and I just went. And I didn't just do that by myself. I had help, I had connection, I had people around me where I was working with them. I hired them to help me, to watch me, make sure I don't fall off the cliff and die. So there's a lot of things that I couldn't have done it all by myself. So coming into the coaching business and coming into my own business, I realized you just can't be doing things by yourself, period. We're never on this earth, on this planet alone. And so along the way, you're always going to find your guide, your mentor, people who can share their wisdom with you. And that is what inspires me to starting my own business and being someone else's light to guide them home.
There's a lot to unpack there. First of all, and I think most critical, is the fact that you face your challenges head on. You are disabled and you face that. And so many businesses are disabled and people do not want to hear that. They don't want to face that fact. I also find, because I have known many disabled people in my life, the only people who tend to be offended by that term are people who are not disabled because they haven't had to face it. Now, you are also a doctor of pharmacology. You have a license to practice in both New York and California. Can you tell us a little something about that?
So growing up, I grew up in a very traditional Chinese family, and everyone knows that concept of a Chinese family. They want their kids to be doctors, lawyer, someone they have a license. And that was my parents' mentality. That's who they want me to be, either be a doctor, lawyers, or someone who has a license so that I can feed myself and sustain myself. So living with their expectation, I went into pharmacy because I hated blood. I don't like blood. I don't like dealing with going in and cutting people up on the surgical table. And I'm way too short to do that. So that was another reality check for me. Even if I wanted to be a doctor, I couldn't because the table is way too high for me. So I had to settle for being a pharmacist. So I went to pharmacy school to at least it's something related to medical that would keep my parents happy. That's the path I chose. It was not something that was meant for my purpose to do, which I realized later. But did I accomplish it? Yes. Did I meet their expectation? Yes. It was something that it was presented to me. It was easy go to. It was my solution right after college graduation with a science degree. Where do I go to? Okay, pharmacy. Let's just continue with that and be happy about it. But it turns out it wasn't happiness that I found. It was more of a burnout.
Our feeling is that you aren't going to be successful unless the team is successful. And your experience really lends itself to that. What would you say to people who feel that, well, I can do it all by myself. I want my people just do what they're told and don't do anything else? I
think there is some truth for people who believe that they can do everything. And yes, you can do everything, but you have to understand that you're one person, you're doing seven different jobs versus each person can do one specific job. And this is a mindset that a lot of women need to change because we should not be multitasking. If you're showing up, being your 100%, chances are you can do one job really well. But if you show up and you imagine yourself, you're this 100% of energy and you're trying to do everything all at once, you got 10% here, you got 20% there, you got 30% there. So you end up not being productive at all and you're actually spreading too thin. And this is another reason why a lot of people feel burned out because they're trying to do everything by themselves. Now, as a business owner and as entrepreneur, we should walking into a business, having that mindset of, I cannot do all the virtual assistant things. I cannot do all the paperwork. And I don't love doing the paperwork. I didn't go into coaching because I love the paperwork. I went into coaching because I love helping people. So how do I show up 100% for my coaching and give someone else who's so passionate about organizing and doing the paperwork, give that to them. And that is where you utilize the people on your team. Every single one of your team member has something really valuable to bring to the table. So make sure you incorporate them. And that is how you build a team culture.
The research on multitasking shows that it doesn't really work at all. Our experience is that a person can do something really well. They can do two things well and perhaps very good, three things good. By four things, everything falls apart. They just can't do that many focuses at once. You also said something about people have individual skill sets and they're very good at doing certain things, but not necessarily everything. And I really like the phrase you said, I want to show up at 100% passionate about what I'm doing and not being spread around so much that I can't focus. I think a lot of individual business guys try to focus on too many things and they try not to trust anybody else in the business.
I think they're afraid. They're afraid. There's that fear mentality of, if I share my resources with someone or share my work with someone, that person is going to steal it from me, and that person is going to walk away with it and maybe even make it better. So instead of sharing our wisdom, sharing our insight to make it even to co-create something bigger and better, we hold back. When you're playing small, when you're playing with fear, chances are your business is not going to be very successful.
You mentioned that women are particularly susceptible to this problem of multitasking. Why do you think that is?
I think it's a cultural belief. It's that limiting belief that women should be certain ways. We raise our daughters, or our mother raised us in the mentality of a woman should have a family, number one, and they should have kids. Once you have kids, family first. Always put family first. Put yourself last. So everything about what you have to do it in sacrifice of your family time, of your personal time, of your self-care time. So women grew up having this limiting belief that this is what it means to be a woman. With that said, though, a lot of men have this same limiting belief because men believe, and I'm sure gentlemen, you can chime in on this, because men grew up with the mentality of, I need to be out there. I cannot be vulnerable. I cannot share my personal struggles with my wife, with my children, because that's just not how men are set up to do.
I want to discuss a little bit more about your concept of hyper control people are coming from a point of fear. How has your coaching experience borne that out?
The fear mentality has to do with protection. It's a survival mode, right? So when we are having limited resources in our business or just in life in general, we go into this survival mode to protect what we have. And once I can protect, and this goes back to the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where you have a pyramid of foundation, right? Your foundation, what is on the bottom of the pyramid, is the survival. Once you can survive, then we can talk about the psychological growth, and ultimately the highest end of the Maslow's hierarchy of need is that high level of self-consciousness or self-actualization. So on the bottom of the pyramid, it has to do with protection. It's about storing your food, having your shelter over you to protect you. So when you are entering in that mentality of surviving, anything that you do is protecting your resources, your business. So if for any reason, anyone show you or behave in such a way that you believe is causing you harm or shaking up that pyramid, the foundation of the pyramid, then you are afraid.
And it's sort of like a fight or flight mentality, isn't it?
Yes.
In your coaching business, can you boil down the most common fears that you have encountered and that you coach people to overcome?
The most common thing that I have encountered is, where can I find clients? How do I reach out to my customer? Where can I be seen? Or how do I get to the networking so that they actually become a revenue? Where is my revenue? So money is a big energy block for a lot of business owners and entrepreneurs.
So would you say that the coaching that you do is more on the business side or on the personal side?
It fits both, because you can have the personal, if your personal side is in balance, it's distracting you from your professional side, right? Yeah. So how many people do we know who show up to work and being all distracted because they had a fight with their wife? So your personal life cannot be separated from your professional life. They go hand to hand. I don't separate out. If my clients want to come and talk about their personal life, I don't stop them from bringing those issues up, because those are distracting them from focusing on their professional life.
One of our overriding concepts is the development of human capital. And it seems, in a lot of businesses, especially ones that are not doing well, is that the employees in the business are not doing well in themselves. I mean, they're not being compensated well. They're not having things to do which are rewarding and exciting for them, a chance to have pride in what they're doing. So what you're saying then is that the control freak is really preventing them from surfacing.
Absolutely. Absolutely, 100%. Those you as a leader, you're walking into your meeting room, and the minute that you walk in, you're someone who said, all right, guys, here's the report. What's wrong with it? That sends off a very different vibe to versus someone who walked in with a report and say, hey guys, what is the opportunity here? What can we learn from this experience? It's a complete different way of addressing to your employee. Your employee, me as an employee sitting in the meeting table, I would rather to work for someone, a leader who walked in and dropped the report on the table and say, guys, what is the opportunity here? So I can share what is working well, what is not working well, and how we can improve. If someone came and say, what is going on? Who do I need to blame? Chances are we're all going to hold back. Even if I have the greatest idea to get us moving to the next quarter, I'm going to hold back because I don't want to be the person who speaks up and getting the blame.
What are the steps associated with getting from a completely dysfunctional environment to the kind of environment that you just described? How do you go about doing that?
So it's about team culture. The way that I am trained as a coach, as a mentor, is that every single one of us we influence each other. The fact that the four of us are sitting here, your energy is affecting my energy is elevating your energy. The minute that you walked into a meeting room, this is before we even begin to talk about team culture, what I would recommend is actually doing an assessment, right? Assessing where is everyone's coming from, who has a lot of anger and who is, all in their head thinking about, why does this happen to me? Why does the pandemic happen to my business? And what am I going to do? Where I'm going to find my job? So you kind of do an initial assessment of where everybody is and where do you want to meet them. So each individual, you're going to show up. And what you're going to show up is you have 7 different ways of choosing how you want to show up. And the 7 different ways is, first of all, you can have this victim mindset. Everything happened to me and you are at the effect of the event. So everything happened to me. The second way that you can approach someone and bring in your energy is you can approach it from the blaming energy or the conflict energy. So you walked in, this is the type of leader who said, okay, it's not doing well. Who do I need to blame? The third type would be someone who is taking personal responsibility. So this quarter is not doing well. We're not meeting the number. We're not meeting the quota. It's my responsibility because I didn't really show up at work that much. I didn't contribute. I didn't meet the deadline. So taking personal responsibility is another way that we can show up. The fourth way that we can show up is with loving and compassion. Uncle Joe had just lost someone during the pandemic. Of course, he doesn't have any time to contribute to make this quarter's number look more pretty. So Uncle Joe is there, and I'm going to show a lot of loving care for Uncle Joe because he just lost someone. The fifth way is opportunity. So we can walk in and see how do we create a win-win situation for everybody. We know everyone has gone through a lot during the pandemic. So what is the opportunity here that we can create a win-win situation for everyone? And then the sixth way of showing up in a meeting or being on a team is that you can think of and bring in your talent. What are you really good at? I'm really good at organization. I'm really good at coming up with strategy. And the highest way of walking into the meeting is actually realizing that everything will have and find its own place in time. And the reason why we're not doing well this quarter is so that we can learn from this life experience, from this experience in general, and learn lessons that we need to learn moving forward. So that's 7 ways of how we can walk into a meeting and interact with each other. So the 4 of us here, we all carry a different type of energy.
Probably picked up that I just got off a government call, which is correct.
Yeah. Oh, that's always fun. Hey,
Sets the mood up.
Just to sort of round this out here, Michelle, what do you think is going to be the biggest problems that businesses are going to face once we get out of this pandemic? Everybody pretty much agrees that the new normal, an overused term, is going to be new, and it's not going to be what it was before, which means new challenges, but also new opportunities. What do you see in the future?
I see a lot of opportunity, especially in the online and virtual world, because I think a lot of us, a lot of business owners who are still practicing the old fashioned way of doing business, going to the network, calling people one-on-one and going to like different breakfast club or networking event at the Chamber of Commerce. I believe that is all going to change. And if you are not really up to date and giving yourself the opportunity to tap into the virtual world, then you're really one step behind in a lot of sense. Because a lot of companies have noticed that during the pandemic, we decided to send people home to work, and it totally worked. Right? So people are going to think about, how can I minimize the traveling time? I would save a lot of time, money on traveling time. So your company may not be paying you to go travel anymore. All they want you to do is open your laptop, have a meeting on Zoom, and you get to travel all around the world without then spending a penny on it. So if you are still someone who is having that mentality of, I'm going to go back and I'm going to go back to the office, I really would encourage you to think about it twice.
So many businesses, particularly small and local businesses, have been damaged. The numbers of businesses that have actually shut down permanently is breathtaking. What do you think would be the biggest thing the single largest thing they need to focus on building back?
I think the single most important things to do is look at what you have left, right? It's always about protecting what you have left. And how do I expand it using the technology? You have to start using your creativity. Maybe it's a jewelry maker who were, behind in a store in the past. How do you showcase your jewelry without people have to travel to you? So you got to be creative and maybe do more live, do more podcasts, and talk about step out of your comfort zone. If you are someone who doesn't like to be on the camera, start getting comfortable on the camera to showcase your jewelry. These doesn't cost you a lot of money. It costs you maybe an iPhone, maybe a phone to do the live stream. There's so many different creative ways that I can think of just sitting here: computer, virtual world, camera, microphone, right? Painting. If you're a painter, you can showcase your painting online to billions and billions of people. So you can continue to get stuck and thinking, this is all I got, I have lost everything. Or you can look at what is it that you have and how can we use what you have and expand it from that.
It strikes me that a lot of businesses, they've had much of what they do stripped away, but maybe for some businesses, what's left is their true core. And that's who they are. They can start recognizing that rather than trying to put back the old business. You now know what your core is, what works the most, and go out from there. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. You did it once. And those who have lost everything, it's not entirely true that you lost everything. You didn't lose yourself, right? So you are still here. So if you're able to start with your first company, you can absolutely start your second one, third one, fourth one, because you already know how, like what's needed, all these resources. So it's not true that you have lost everything. You didn't lose yourself. And that's the most important part.
Michelle, where can people find you online?
They can find me on my website at elevatelifecoaching.org. That is actually the best place to find me, to shoot me an email. I'd love to connect with people.
And I believe you have a YouTube station as well, yes?
I have everything.
Or a YouTube channel, excuse me.
I have a podcast. I have a YouTube. I'm everywhere. I have a YouTube, and people can find me on the YouTube as well. It's Michelle Quay 2018. I think the one last message I would like to share is just don't be afraid. When you are afraid, chances are you're hesitating on that step. No matter that step is leading you to something bigger, better, or something that just take you out of your comfort zone. So don't be afraid and just take that step. So as a business owner, especially smaller business, you have to be open to be vulnerable in order to be seen. So if someone who is struggling with just creating that online presence and just being online, what I would recommend is actually to share your struggle. People connect to the story. People connect to the struggles. Because when I'm hearing that you are struggling the same way as I am, you become my equal, and I can relate to your business now. I can see that there's a person behind the business rather than just the number, just the brand. There's actually a person I can talk to and who would understand this is what I'm going to do. So I truly believe that vulnerability is the step number one to visibility.
Well, thank you so much, Michelle. This has been a very enlightening session that we've had here. I said at the beginning it was going to be a special podcast. I think we kept our promise on that. Thanks to you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
If you want to save time, save money, and get results faster, listen to the Oval Table and learn from experts who will give you their best advice.
Well, I'm so glad that we had Michelle on today's show so close to the holiday season, because I do find that there's an inspiration in there. The story of an 11-year-old girl hit by a taxi, her legs crushed, and really rendering her handicapped for the rest of her life. And part of her inspiration to me is, this is a word that does not intimidate her. It does not offend her. She says to us, yes, I'm handicapped. Get used to it. I am. And so I love someone who faces their problems head on like that and just plows through. I know you have a lot to say, Doug, so I'm going to turn it over to you. But before I do that, there's just one story that we talked to Michelle about offline, and it really didn't make it into the interview. And I think it's really critical to her story, which is she decided she was going to travel by herself alone to a foreign land. And she decided the place to go was Machu Picchu. Now, for those of you who may have been there or have heard about it, Machu Picchu is perched way up in the Andes, and there are no roads. There is a pathway, a very narrow pathway that goes up the mountain. It is a 4-day hike because that's as close as vehicles can get there. It is very narrow pathway. There are many places where two people cannot pass each other. That's how narrow it is. And on the first day, the person who was the guide came to her and said, "You're holding the donkey back. You're holding the whole group back. You need to make a decision, and it's your decision. Are you going to get up 2 hours early, start at 5 o'clock in the morning when everybody else is starting at 7 o'clock? And are you going to make that trek up there? It's up to you, your decision." She decided, by God, she was going to make that trip. The only thing is, remember that pathway is very narrow. She had a person who would walk with her, make sure that she wouldn't go over the edge, because remember, she is on crutches. Well, when we first heard that story, Doug and Vaughn and I, we were so taken by that we came up with a phrase. And it's a phrase that we want to use very badly on this show, but we couldn't until this episode. And that is, stay in front of the donkey. Stay in front of the donkey. Get there. And your donkey may be dysfunction. It may be competition. It may be debt. It may be lack of true profit. It may be lack of a real functioning team. Whatever your donkey is, get in front of it and stay there. And, well, that's the thought that Michelle inspired in us. Doug, over to you.
I think the story of the donkey is walk faster than the donkey. Somewhat came out from the bus driver who says, you can get back on the bus or you can walk faster than the donkey.
You're right.
And you can give in to your problems. You can give in to difficulty, or you can beat them. And Michelle chose to beat them on a very personable, person-sacrificing basis to do it exactly just that. Because she recognizes that she has a disability, but you just deal with it. And so many people who are starting a business or getting into a business or have been in a business for a while say, I can't be successful because, and they put out some kind of a disability thing that limits their ability to be successful. And oftentimes it's nowhere near the difficulty that Michelle has faced. And so I think a person needs to step back a little bit and try and figure out, is it an excuse or is it actually something that is truly in the way? And if it's something truly in the way, then maybe you should figure out a way around it or a way over it and not just be defeated by it. One other thing that I was impressed with in Michelle's conversation was that there are people who try to do everything themselves. And we certainly run into these people, managers who think they have to do everything themselves. They have to make every decision. But what we find is that those people are not living up to their potential, because you really can't do everything by yourself. And Michelle, just as she had someone helping her get up the pathway to make sure that she didn't fall off the edge of the cliff, you still have to have people helping you. And the people helping you as a manager are those other people sitting around the oval table and allowing them to bring their skill sets to the table. And another problem with managers is they sometimes think they can multitask and can do multiple things at the same time. And as Michelle points out, not even a computer can do multiple things at the same time. You can do things in sequence. You can do one thing, stop, do another thing, stop, then go back to the other thing. But you really can't do multitasking. So, and her feeling is that if you're going to show up, I mean, you might as well show up at 100%.
Exactly. Her whole concept is you can do one thing well, very well. You can do a couple things well, maybe one more, good. But after that, the whole thing falls apart. And you just need the people there who can do those things as well as you can do the thing that you do. Again, just the reminder that the donkey may shove you over the edge. Don't let it do that. Get the people around you who can help you up the mountain.
I found in my own experience that I can do something really good. I can do two things very good. But when you get to the fourth thing, everything falls apart. Nothing gets done of any consequence. So I think managers kind of do that thing. They try to do too many things at once. They don't allow other people to be of assistance. They don't allow other people to bring in their skill sets. By focusing on to do too many things, Michelle thinks that it's a lack of trust, that you don't trust anybody else to do anything right. So you have to do everything yourself. So our question would be, who hired those people in the first place? And if you hired those people in the first place, then why did you hire people you can't trust to do things you're better than you? And several of our other people who we've interviewed over the past have said exactly the same thing. Jim Hearn being one and Bill McFarland being another. If you think you're the smartest guy in the room, you have a major problem. And that problem is you.
And we've all heard about the so-called Great Resignation going on in the workforce today. One of the major reasons for it is just that kind of manager who has to do it all himself. And people are not allowed to grow. They aren't allowed to advance within their profession. And that's one of the reasons they're gone. It is probably the biggest reason, Forbes magazine says, it's probably the biggest reason why people leave their jobs. They don't leave their jobs. They leave their manager.
I think a study done by McGraw-Hill years ago was saying something to the effect of 63 to 68% of people leave because of the manager, not because of the job, not because of compensation, but because of the direct report. They just couldn't stand it anymore and had to move on. And that is extremely expensive because not only do you have to then find someone else, but you have to train someone else. And that lack of productivity is an extremely expensive thing and something, basically to be avoided. Another thing that Michelle talked about was the effect of the pandemic on working and how that's changing a lot of businesses, and not necessarily to the negative, but it's changing it sometimes to the positive. And as far as people working, certain people who worked in hospitality, restaurants, a few things like that over the years, just simply were away from it for a while. And then they said, I don't really want to go do that anymore. I want to do something different. And is it really the nature of the work, or is it nature of the work environment that they were in? I think in a number of cases, it's not just the work; it's the way they were working and who they were working for needs to be considered as part of the reason why I don't want to go back to that kind of work anymore.
Right. You got to let them blossom, let them do their jobs, but also you just can't do the same job for 20 years. You just can't. It's soul sucking. It's mind numbing. People don't want to do that anymore. And they are refusing to do it. So for anyone who wants to start a business or manage a closely held business, you have to keep that in mind, that these people, your most important asset in your organization is your people, and they need to be taken care of and developed. So if you're doing everything yourself, if you have that fear that you can't let it go, you can't let people do it, you're not only hurting your business and yourself, you're hurting them as well.
Yeah, I reminded of Jesse Stankrone, and he was saying that we asked him, how do you take on a situation which is a problem and chaotic? And he says, well, I start with the people. I sit down and I talk with each person individually, and I see what their skill sets are and what I have to work with. Tools, that comes later. Process comes later. I start with the people. And during the pandemic, if people are not coming back to your business, then they're essentially voting with their feet. And oftentimes voting with their feet is a lot more important vote, a lot more expressive vote than simply not showing up or saying things that, I don't want to work at this, I don't want to do this kind of thing anymore, dragging their feet or whatever. But voting with their feet to where they actually move on is a very significant vote. And one needs to pay attention as to why that vote is happening and what can I do about it. As a manager, as an owner of a business, you have nothing to lose by people becoming successful, by people becoming who they can be and making the largest contribution possible. You have nothing to lose by that. But if you overlook it and you don't allow it, then sooner or later, these people vote with their feet. And that's a tragic for your business as well as it is for the economy in general.
If you are looking for a competitive advantage, I encourage you to look at the words you use when you promote, speak, and sell. I can help. Talk to me. fripp.com.
We all hope you have a productive and inspirational week. I'm Rishi Katz, and we will see you next time at the Oval Table.